Thursday marks the anniversary of the death of King Æthelstan, or Athelstan, who was widely regarded as the first king of England. He reigned as king of the Anglo-Saxons from 924 to 927 before becoming king of the English and reigning from 927 to 939. Before this, Athelstan had become King of Mercia when his father Edward the Elder died in 924 and, after his half-brother, Ælfweard, died 3 weeks later, he soon became King of Wessex too. Years later, he drove the Vikings out of York and added Northumbria to his kingdom. And despite subsequent setbacks, including the fall of York to Vikings following his death, Athelstan had established a centralized monarchy and forged a nation. Perhaps, for this reason, Athelstan was voted England's greatest monarch in a poll run by leading historians Tom Holland and Dominic Sandbrook. The contest, which was launched via Mr. Holland and Mr. Sandbrook's The Rest of History podcast last year, sought to find the greatest king or queen through a knockout tournament. A staggering 84,000 votes were cast as monarchs were pitted against each other before eventually delivering a shock winner in the form of Athelstan. Mr. Holland said, "I thought it was going to be a walkover for Elizabeth. I'm really surprised. It's like Emma Raducanu going all the way at the US Open." Polls were conducted on Twitter with Athelstan emerging victorious in the final by 50.5% to Queen Elizabeth I's 49.5%. To get to the final, he defeated Queen Victoria, King Edward III and William the Conqueror. Read more. Kate Middleton proved destiny to be future queen during split from Prince William. King Æthelstan was voted England's greatest monarch in a poll last year. Image, Getty Images. Athelstan, c. and his father, r. at the Battle of Sherwood, in 920 AD. Image, Getty Images. Step down. Harry and Andrew trusted royals urged to take over key role in regency reform following King Charles' accession to the throne following the passing of Queen Elizabeth. Alterations are needed across a number of issues, including the appointment of councillors of state. Who could get the key role? Find out here. While Athelstan has been relatively forgotten, his claim to the title of greatest monarch is considerable. As mentioned, he united the kingdoms of Mercia and Wessex before driving the Vikings out of Northumbria to create a united Kingdom of England 2 years later, building something of a unified kingdom. Mr. Holland, author of Athelstan, The Making of England, said, "Athelstan is less remembered because 1066 and the Norman conquest intervenes, but he was seismically important." He continued, "He was one of the founding fathers of England. I think people tend to assume that England has always existed. He was a great conqueror, but he was much more than that. He felt a profound moral obligation to rule justly and well, and was concerned with giving laws which were just and equitable." The son of Edward the Elder and grandson of Alfred the Great, Athelstan had to compete with many half-brothers in order to take the throne. His main competitor for the crown was Ælfweard. Athelstan was the son of Edward the Elder, R, and grandson of Alfred the Great, L. Image, Getty Images. Trending Edward's desires for his successor are unknown. At the time of his death, he was the ruler of Mercia and Wessex, but it is unclear whether he intended for one of the brothers to rule Mercia and the other brother to rule Wessex, or whether he wanted one of his sons to control the whole kingdom. The plans for the line of succession were, however, disrupted almost immediately, as just 16 days after the death of his father, Ælfweard also died. Athelstan, who had already been accepted as King of Mercia having spent a large proportion of his life there, took the opportunity to take control of Wessex as well. Despite initial resistance, Athelstan was eventually crowned King of Wessex and Mercia in September 925. His coronation was held in Kingston upon Thames and was carried out by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Athelm. 2 years later, he conquered the northern territories of York and Northumbria, making him the first southern king to rule the north and the de facto first king of England. In this role, he centralized the government, founded churches and created an administrative center. In a bid to secure alliances with other kingdoms and make his reign known across Europe, he married his sisters to continental powers. Don't miss, Harry snubbed William's offer of crisis talks over leak fears King Charles to host South Africa's Ramaphosa in first state visit. Thousands of messages sent to King Charles III after Queen's death. Athelstan ordering the Bible to be translated into the Saxon language in 930. Image, Getty Images. Athelstan had inherited his rule over Wales from his father and aunt, but never formally held control over them. Rather, he used diplomacy to maintain his control, accepting the Welsh kings into his court and establishing an alliance between Wales and England, although the Welsh kings had to pay him large tributes in order to maintain the agreement. He later set his eyes on Scotland, invading in 934. And, in 937, his army defeated an invasion from the united forces of Olaf Guthfredson, King of Dublin, Constantine II, King of Scotland and Owain, King of Strathclyde at the Battle of Brunanburh, resulting in heavy losses on both sides. The Battle of Brunanburh is regarded as one of the key moments in English history. Athelstan not only preserved the unity of his kingdom but also proved that, despite the united efforts of three of his most powerful enemies, he was the strongest contender. In 975, the historian Ælfweard wrote that following Athelstan's victory, the fields of Britain were consolidated into one, there was peace everywhere, and abundance of all things. In 975, the historian Ælfweard wrote that following Athelstan's victory, the fields of Britain were consolidated into one, there was peace everywhere, and abundance of all things. Athelstan's empty tomb in Malmesbury Abbey, his remains were lost during the English Reformation. Image, Getty Images. That being said, the aftermath of the battle was not an explicit victory for Athelstan, with some historians describing the conflict as ending in a stalemate. Having survived the battle, Olaf Guthfredson fled back to Dublin and later became King of Northumbria following the death of Athelstan. While Athelstan only managed to maintain unity in England for a short period of time, its significance remains and is perhaps one of the greatest achievements of any king or queen in England, laying the foundation for his successors for hundreds of years. Michael Wood, historian, broadcaster and Anglo-Saxon expert, has published books and presented documentaries about Athelstan, lauding him for his achievements as monarch. As quoted on the Rest is History podcast, Mr. Wood said, "Athelstan is unseated today. He always was, but let's not forget that he is the great, early innovator. His vision laid down the template for English law, coinage, culture, assembly, politics and sacred geography. He is the forgotten presiding genius of England, but this can be rectified."